a very exciting guest today. We have Ann Konkoly. She's going to introduce herself in just a minute. Thank you so much for coming. For those of you who are just joining, we're going to be talking today about entrepreneurship and the journey to entrepreneurship. And she's going to share her story, and we're going to just have kind of some conversation around that. So thank you so much, Ann, for joining. If you want to introduce yourself to everybody out there.
Thank you, Farah, for having me. I'm happy to be here. So my name's Ann Konkoly. I'm a certified nurse midwife, and I am the owner of two businesses. One is called Authentic Coaching, and I work with a lot of NPs in private practice and help them make money so they can live the good life. And then I also have a private practice that I own called Cultivate Women's Health, and I am located here in Cleveland, Ohio. And I see women who are looking for really help and support with hormone replacement therapy in perimenopause and menopause. And I love it. They're kind of my two, it like keeps my brain active in the medical world. I love the entrepreneurship. I love the business building, coaching and all that. So it's a lot of fun.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. And for those who are watching, please say hello. Let us know where you're watching from, what city, what country. Let us know if you have any questions related to entrepreneurship, and specifically, maybe in terms of owning your own practice. If you're a nurse practitioner, any types of questions, please drop it in. And if you happen to be watching the replay, you can also ask those questions there. And for those who are just joining, like I said, for the first time, my name is Farah. I'm a career coach for nurses as well, and I help with career guidance and resumes and things like that. So let's get into it. So tell me, pre-entrepreneurship, kind of what led you to decide, hey, you know what? I kind of want to make this money on my own, and I think I could do this. Kind of
Yeah.
let's through that story.
Yeah, happy to talk about it. Hey, Lauren, just wanted to do a shout out to you. Thanks for joining. So I was in clinical practice as a certified nurse midwife, and up until 2018, I had just done my MBA, and I was looking for my next steps as a certified nurse midwife. And I was really burnt out from clinical practice, and my health wasn't in good shape. And so I knew there was a next step for me, but I didn't know what that was. So I was in my MBA program, and at the same time, I'd done an executive coaching certificate program and learned how to coach and how to do executive coaching. And I felt like, this is coaching always sounded interesting to me. And I thought, this will be a good skill to have. And it's so similar to what I do as a midwife, with so many of my patients. And so I did the coaching certificate course. And then during my MBA program, I was in a course on entrepreneurship that was called Living the Good Life. And I was like, I want that, whatever that is. And during that course, a life coach came in, and she was talking about, he did this entrepreneurship course. It was, the format of it was like how I built this with on NPR. And so he would bring in all of these different entrepreneurs. He was an entrepreneur himself. But he would do interviews with them, and he would say, like, how'd you get started and what do you do? And, what kind of revenue do you make and all that? And so the life coach, he had a friend of his, Julie, who I still to this day, she's a lovely human. She came and was talking about how she had transitioned a corporate career at Panera into a life coaching business, and how, she made 7 figures in that business. And I was like,
Tell me more.
What? And I never forget, I was sitting in that class and I was like writing notes furiously, because I was like, oh, and I just finished this coaching certificate program, and I thought, you know what, this is a very natural skill set that I have. It's so close to what I'm doing, already as a CNM. And I thought, but it's without all of the BS around, all of the documentation and the ICD-10 codes and, prior authorizations and all that shit. So so I really kind of leapt full force into coaching. I left my position. I essentially retired from clinical practice in mid 2019, and then I started building my business, and then I haven't looked back since, until this, probably a little bit closer to about the 1st of May of this year. I was like, I got the itch, and I was like, you know what? I want to do a little private practice, and I want to do hormone replacement therapy, and I want to do it my way. And I'm going to go back in and after a 4-year pause. And so now I'm back in it, and I love both, but that was the coaching, doing the coaching certificate and then learning about it through school. and then seeing an example of what was possible.
Right.
That was really kind of for me. I was like, oh, like I could do that.
Exactly. And that's such a good, story that you tell because, a lot of times, and Ann and I had conversations previous to this. I was also on her show 'cause she has a podcast. Um, we were talking about how some nurses sometimes are afraid to kind of just talk about money because it's almost like a taboo thing. And even when you're a new nurse, nobody really talks to you about like, oh, you should negotiate your salary or, those types of things. And even when nurses were doing travel nursing and getting, a lot of money, but, they're putting their lives on the line, right? Like I was a previous ER nurse and I'm like, you know what? Yes, go get it, get that money, right? Because you deserve it, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I think a lot of nurses are now kind of seeing this other opportunity of entrepreneurship as attainable, right? Because as you said, you attain so many different skills, and a lot of what we do as nurses, it's very transferable skills to other kind of industries. So, can you talk to some nurses who maybe are out there and are thinking about going into business, but they're like, you know what, I don't really know, how to even get started because even for me, it's very overwhelming to start my
Yeah.
career in business. So, can you kind of talk to that?
Absolutely. I think it's totally normal. And it's the same thing that we've done as nurses, which is that, doing your first IV feels like,
Mhm.
like it is so, it can be scary for so many of us. It was the same thing that I experienced when I did my first IUD insertion. It was the same thing I experienced when I did my first incision and drainage. It was like, it's a totally normal thing for when you think about doing a business or you think about changing it up or reinventing the way in which you do nursing or the way in which you use the skills and experience that you have and repackage them and repurpose them. But I think the beautiful thing is that if you are able to look at it as what skills do I have and then think about, oh, like there's so much opportunity, the majority of us will at the first, sight of that, we will start to feel like very overwhelmed because it's very new, it feels very scary, there's a lot I don't know. We also then have an entire narrative for many women, whether it's about, and I say women, and I think this translates into nursing too. We have a lot of strong narrative around, money and around who's responsible in our society with money and who's not responsible in our society with money. And so, who has access to money. And so I think you just got to first notice that if it calls to you, if it sounds interesting to you, there's a reason for that. Number one. Number two, if it feels overwhelming, it's totally normal. The same thing happened to you probably as a new nurse or as a new NP.
Mhm.
And the way that we overcome that is, right, it's not like I, don't do the IV and leave nursing school and then never come back, right? Like I sit in my car, I have a good cry, I get right back on like I come right back and do it again the next day, right? Because, the team of support is there and like, and it's something that's important to me to learn the skill. So business is no different. It's just it's a it's a fun endeavor, I think, for me personally. And I still get scared of things and overwhelmed just like I used to do. Like I don't think there's this like magical place that anybody gets to where we don't experience either fear or, like just any of that gut wrenching, like vomit inducing moments. I think we still have them. The key is just to be able to like manage your brain around it. Like, oh yeah, there have been things in my career that I've done that felt really hard and tough, and the only way to get out of that was just to go through and just like get it done and like get more experience with it and get more comfortable with it. Um, and so I think it's totally normal.
Right.
And the key is not to let it get in the way of whether or not you go out and do something that you really want to do.
Yeah. So I think you touched on a lot of great points. I think a big part of it is mindset, right? So we talk about mindset a lot, and it sounds kind of cliche, but honestly, I follow a couple different people. I follow Alex Hermosi and his wife. I forgot her first name, Layla.
Layla, yeah.
Yeah. And they're millionaires now, and they have this company called acquisition.com where they help other companies kind of grow. But really, it was all about, the biggest thing was mindset. And they're like, you know what? We can do this. Like, these other
Yes.
people are doing it, right? So mindset is huge. And the, the, like the perceived likelihood, like, yes, I can do this, right? And that consistency, like, and just taking action, I think is important. And I think anybody that you talk to, whether they're a nurse or not a nurse, and you can let me know if this, this is what you believe because you're a coach, right? We never stop learning, right? And it's the
Yeah.
same thing in business, because the moment you stop learning or connecting with others and going through coaching programs or going through masterminds, you're going to remain stagnant, and
Yep.
then your business is not going to grow. So, talk to me about the importance of investing in yourself and in your business, even if they don't work with, say, you or anybody else. Like, what is the importance of investing in yourself and just learning about business?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I just joined a new business coaching program last month. I was laughing because they sent out an email and said, like, go into the Facebook group and put up your wins. And
Mhm.
it's funny. And I've been in the world of an online business for the past, 4.5 years. And I've been in a variety of coaching programs, mostly specifically business coaching. And I've also had a personal coach that I've worked with.
Mhm.
And, even in this moment, 4.5 years in, I understand creating ads. I understand automation, digital marketing. I understand how to build funnels, freebies, lead magnets, all the, like, I've done all of it in some form or another.
Mhm.
And I had to laugh because just being in the community, and the coach in there taught it just a little bit differently. And it just my I and then I was watching some other people, and I was like, "Oh, right. I just got to go back to basics on my sales sequence and make some fine tuning of there." I mean, I made so much money last month, and it was so exciting to just get into, right, like, to, like, but that's me at year 4.5, right? And just continuing to learn and continuing to go back and refine. And that's the beautiful thing. I think that when whatever skill it is that you're thinking about adding into your skill set, it's like, learn it once, benefit from it year after year after year. Watch yourself be able to take that skill and translate it into something else where your return on investment is so incredible. I mean, and the other piece, I think, particular to coaching, it's like when you're in the clinic or whatever, and you're going to learn how to do first assist, or maybe you're going to learn, like, how to do colposcopy or something like that. It's a really useful skill, right? And probably transferable in clinical practice between departments, maybe not so much, but, like, if I go from one organization to another, I can use that skill again. When I invest in coaching, I invest in my brain. And when I invest in my brain, I learn it once, and then I will inevitably, year over year, take what I've learned, and I will have compounding and appreciating improvement in my results. Do you know what I mean? So I really, coaching from that standpoint is, people will say a lot about mindset, and it's the one thing that has kept me, it's kept me going a lot of the time when business otherwise feels kind of, challenging. So I think it's got that piece that's just, if you're willing to invest in yourself, especially in your brain and how your brain works.
Mhm.
I mean, and I'm not even probably halfway through my life. Like, I still got the whole second half to go, and I'm investing in these tools now. I wish I had them 10
Sooner.
years ago. Yeah, like, I wish I had them when I was a new nurse on the floor.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, neither here nor there at this point, but I think if you have an opportunity to do something like that and learn, and, how to take your brain and manage it, and there's just so much that's possible from there.
Yeah, and I think you said a lot there. Because the thing is, when I first started, I invested in a couple of coaches, and it wasn't just, anybody that was like in nursing that was coaching. Some of them were marketing coaches, and
Yep.
there's another coach that I had was a business coach. She was like a project manager, did a lot of digital courses. So that's one thing, right? We
Yeah.
need to learn not just from other nurses who are in entrepreneurship, because I'm part of the NNBA, so that's the National Nurses in Business, and I know you were a part of them as well. So the biggest thing is to learn from all industries, right?
Yep.
And the thing is, it's a long game. It's not like
Yes.
boom, I'm just
Yes.
gonna learn all this. And so you have to learn not to put too much pressure on yourself and
Yep.
pace yourself. So what do you think about that aspect? And also nurses who, I think nurses, a lot of nurses are afraid of promoting themselves, right? And that's
Hmm.
big in business, right? Promoting your
Yeah.
business, promoting yourself. So what are your thoughts on that?
I'm writing this down because I want to address both of the things. Number one, the first question, which is the like, the long game aspect of it. It is a game. And I think that's the benefit of being in a business, which is when you get beyond the bedside, you're in a business and like we can look at more, we can take like a gaming approach to it almost like, what if it is just a game to be in business? And what if like the funnel, that I have to build or the digital marketing tool that I have to use or the online course that I have to build, what if it's just like, what if it could be super fun? Like, what if I made it a game? Made it mean nothing about me. And I really had like a lot of fun with it to see, like knowing full well that I don't have the pressure of like the game's not going to require a code. Do you know what I mean? Like where I'm running to the OR with this game. No, like if I'm building an online course, I love the idea. Yeah, right. Nobody's dying here. And when you were talking about long game, I was thinking about, Alex Hormozy, right? His podcast is called The Game because his mindset around business is this is a game and we get to win at it. And I love how he talks about that because to me, as someone who's like on my Clifton Strengths report, like my number one strength is that I'm an achiever. And so I love to think about business in terms of being able to win and get out there and get a product, and create a lot of impact and do a lot of good for people. Right. So I love that portion of it. That's the first portion. The second portion is that, yes, there's like have a long view of it. It's the same thing in our nursing careers. Think about like, if your IVs, if you're no good, if you're not great at putting in IVs for the first 6 months of your career, who cares if you have a 10-year career? Who cares if you have a 5-year career or a 20-year career? Like, so the first 6 months, you blow a bunch of IVs. Oh, well, next, like let's get our reps in and let's just get going then. Right. So that's kind of the first part of what you said. But the second piece is the promoting. And I think it's just, I think that we have been trained for a lot of us, if we've grown up in a culture here in the United States. I think we have been trained to be very self-conscious and to be very, to consider what we're doing and if other people are happy about it and what other people think about it, and a lot of the self-promotion comes a little bit from sometimes from the fear of putting yourself out there and but sometimes it comes more from the people pleasing standpoint, which is like if I put something out there, right, I could fail, it could just blow up in my face terribly or no one could even notice, but it could not end up in a fail or a failure. But I think the other piece of it is that many of us, especially if we're women, if we've been conditioned and grown up in the States, like we are conditioned, many of us, to be people pleasers. And so the minute that we start thinking about doing something where the perception to us is that it could cause somebody to be like, who does she think she is?
Right,
What
right.
does she think she's doing? All of a sudden, our reptilian brain is just like, danger, danger, don't do that, right? It feels very, very scary. And so I think, you know, it's a little bit of a mix of those two things. Sometimes we are scared of promoting because we are nervous and the fear of failure is legit and it feels really big. Sometimes it's just because we've been trained to be the people who play nice in the sandbox, who look good and who don't complain and don't negotiate and don't make a fuss about anything. And so the minute that we start talking about something that's worked for us or talking and promoting ourselves, the other that it feels very personal and it feels like we're not being the people pleasers we were trained to be. And then the last piece I think for in terms of promotion is that, and I have a conversation with a lot of my clients about this, which is that the other thing we have to do is that when we become nurses, many of us become, have take on the identity of being a nurse, right? Because we have been, right, we've been trained of like, this is what nurses do. And for a lot of us, that's not problematic and that really is beneficial. But the problem is that when you see yourself as a nurse and then you set up, well, this is what nurses do. And then the minute that you go outside of that, you become a life coach. You start to sell a product. You go and create an online course and try to teach people in a different way outside of what we've traditionally been trained as nurses. A lot of people get, take that and they say, oh, like they make it mean something about themselves. And then they get these like very, they get a little bit nervous about breaking these unspoken rules of, what nurses should do. And I think that's
Right.
the other piece, which is we just have to be like, aware of all of these because they can be barriers to growth and they can be barriers to getting out there and creating a product or a service that is really helpful to somebody.
So yeah, two things. So awesome things that you talked about. And of course, you know me, I'm all about like always promoting other nurses and promoting myself. And I'm like going to throw in the book now. So,
Yeah.
Nurse Making Money Moves.
Yeah.
I wrote this book specifically because a lot of nurses were asking me, like, how did you do it? So, this book has basically things about mindset, how to start basics, how to start your own business. And it's a
Yep.
work, and you can find it on my website, nursefarah.com. Because I just think that it's so important to create things. And I was hesitant to do this in the beginning because I'm like, well, is it going to be good enough? I don't have enough time. And then I always say, it's like, there's this quote that I read once, and it was in the marketing book, the One Page Marketing Plan by Alan Dibb. And I think he says 80% out the door is better than 100% in the drawer, right? So,
Oh,
like,
that's a good one. Yeah. That's a good
perfection,
one.
right? Like
Yep.
progress over perfection, because you'll never do anything, right?
Yep.
I'm like, let me just put it out there and see what happens.
Yeah.
And I think the second piece of what you were talking about that made me think back is nurses that are going to go into entrepreneurship typically don't have the luxury to just say, hey, listen, I'm just going to quit my job and just go full in, right? So it's very difficult to do that unless you're like really financially stable, right?
Yep.
Um, so most people have to do it at the same time, kind of what I'm doing now, because I still work and I still do this coaching on business, right? But the reason that I didn't start sooner was because of my previous employer. Because in my head, I thought, well, I'm the assistant director of education. If I start getting on social media and talking about I'm a career coach and I'm this, what are they going to think about me? Are they going to fire me? Are they going to, you
Yeah.
know? So I think that's a big piece. I don't know if you kind of had anybody that you're working with that has that, kind of that hesitancy to start because of their
Oh,
employer.
yeah. Well, and sometimes it's legit. Sometimes you have a non-compete in there that says you can't be. I have a lot of clients who come to me and they have
Right.
they've signed a contract with a non-compete that really is very restrictive in terms of their ability to go out and build a business beyond what they do in their current jobs. So
Right. So
from a legal
legally,
stamp,
yeah.
so legally, I think it's important to just be very clear about knowing what you can and can't do based on the terms and that you agree to when you signed on with your current employer and whether or not you are contractually obligated to a certain set of terms, right? So that's a piece of it. But I think the other piece is just, again, it comes back to this, it's a little bit of the perfectionism. It's a little bit of, I mean, here's the reason why we do it. Let's talk about that. All of us as humans have egos, and our egos are very sensitive. And so when you go out and you do something new, your first thought is to think about how it will affect you and how it could negatively affect you. That's like the first thing the brain does from the limbic system. It's like, wait a minute, we are exiting the cave here. It's like akin to if we were, 2,000 years ago being on the savannah and looking for saber-toothed tigers. Like you left the cave, you left the pack. Are there saber-toothed tigers who are going to eat you for dinner, right? And our brains still function like that to a degree
Right.
because, right? Exactly. So part of it is just being able to manage and notice like, oh yeah, my brain is telling me this is highly problematic and could be very dangerous. And I know that I'm taking calculated risks. I've reviewed my contract. There's no non-compete. There's no reason that I can't do it. And then having the conversation with your brain to be like, well, look, you either help the humans, create the online course, write the book, open the business, and help all the humans, or you stay safe in the cave. And my brain's giving me those two options right now. So, which serves me better in the long run? And sometimes, sometimes it doesn't serve you to go out and like, get out of the cave. Most of the time, though, it does. And so I think it's it's a little bit about, once you have the legal component tucked away and we know that that's not a concern, then I think the second piece is just being very on to the fact that your brain will naturally respond with finding signs of danger and telling you ought not do them, in order, thinking that it's trying to protect you. And from an evolutionary standpoint, that's totally legit and it was doing its job. But in 2023, we get the chance with a very developed prefrontal cortex to be like, oh, I get you. You're totally worried. You think we're going to die. I have multiple things set up in line to be able to do that. Just like you said, you're like, look, I'm building my business alongside working, in a job, full-time, part-time, whatever. This is how you meet your brain. And you're like, look, I got us covered. I'm good. I still got income coming in. I've got some certain, and even if this job fell through, I got a lot of skills that I could go. I could go back to the bedside. I could go to another department. I could go, apply at a couple of different places. Like, being able to soothe your brain in that way is, I mean, if you can manage to do that actually as being an entrepreneur, and to just calm your brain when it feels like the house is burning down because it's on fire. I mean, it's one of the best skills that we can use and learn as entrepreneurs and nurses.
Right. So if somebody wanted to work with you, kind of walk them through how they can contact you and kind of how it would be to work with you. Like, how could they find out?
So we have 2 programs that are coming up. I run a program called Coach Training, which is starting in February, and I teach nurse practitioners how to coach. So they can either incorporate it into their current practice, or they could build a coaching business, or they could build a coaching side hustle. And then my other one is the NP, the Nurse Practitioner Business Accelerator. And that's a program that also starts in February. And that's a 6-month coaching program. And we're doing our first ever annual retreat that I'm really excited about. That's going to be a business retreat, 2 days down in Miami Beach. I know you, I don't know if it was you or somebody else who was like, you're going to be in my backyard. She was whoever it was so excited. She was like, oh, so glad you're coming to Miami. And so if anybody is interested in either of those programs, and then we always have a kind of a couple of other options. I have one-on-one coaching that I do for nurses in business. And so all you have to do is reach out. And the easiest way to find me is either on Facebook or Instagram. You'll find me at Ann Konkoly, CNM. So easily reachable.
Awesome. And do you have a website?
I do. It's annkonkolycnm.com. And there's lots of information too, and a freebie on there that'll be useful probably for some people. And then the other place too is Side Hustles for all the NPs out there and advanced practice nurses. We have a group that's called Side Hustles for APNs. And so we've got probably 12 or 13,000 people in that Facebook group. And so we talk all about side hustles, making money, repurposing, repackaging skills that you have to, make your first 2,000 in a side hustle. So
that's awesome.
Yep.
So, I feel like there's so many more things that I'd like to cover, but we'd probably have to have you back on again. But what would you say, say somebody doesn't have a business at all? What would you say, like, your biggest starting kind of advice would be? Because I know for me, I think I tell nurses, you just got to figure out what you actually want to do and if there's an actual market for it. But like, if they're totally overwhelmed or not sure where to start, what would be your advice to those nurses?
So keep it super simple and repackage a skill that you already have, right? So a lot of people come to me and they get really overwhelmed because they want to do this course, they want to put together a course, or they want to start a coaching business, and those aren't necessarily things that they've already done. So in order to just kind of calm the brain and get it back into a more familiar zone, I usually tell them, what skills do you already have that you use that are useful and that, somebody else could be using right now? And so whether it's editing resumes or, oh, I'm really good at, like I figured out a great way to negotiate, or I figured out a great way to maintain my weight or cut out gluten out of my diet or whatever, take that and then repurpose it. Go find somebody that you think you could help with it and ask them and say, hey, I have done this thing. Do you want me to help? I know you're trying to do this thing. Do you want some help with that? And just make them an offer. And that's how you get out and you test the market. And it doesn't require any money up front, and it doesn't require any like big, huge project management plans. It just requires you to take an existing skill that you have, to go out and make an offer to somebody and help somebody out. Like that's an easy way to get going in, a side hustle or getting your feet wet in entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I think that's really big, and I think just even just setting up just whatever it is, the structure. I usually think the LLC is very easy to set up, and
Oh
honestly,
yeah,
don't realize how easy it is, and it's literally in a couple of days to a week or so,
yep.
depending on what state you live in. You can have your LLC set up and just like a business bank account, and you're good to
Super
go.
easy. I agree. The one I actually, before Thanksgiving, I built a new course. It's called NP Side Hustle School. And I tell them in there, I'm like, the easiest way to make money as a nurse or a nurse practitioner, in my mind, is
Mhm.
to create a mentorship group and to go out there and get a group of people where if you have some specialty knowledge that other people generally don't have, put a group together, meet once a week for 4 to 6 weeks, charge them a set amount of money, get on Zoom, teach them, make some money. Like
Free.
it's
You get a free Zoom account too.
you
Yeah.
get free Zoom, like and so I tell people all the time, like if I had to go back and do it all again, like
Right.
one of the first ways that I got started was doing resumes and CVs and editing them. But the other way that I think, what I took from that was like, oh, I could teach people in a group setting how to
Mhm.
improve their LinkedIn profiles. And so I would
Right.
do that. I would get on Zoom for 60 minutes and go through, this is how you set up a LinkedIn profile. And these are the basics of negotiation. And like, that is so, to us, it's like, oh, of course I know how to do that.
Right. But some
But
people they don't.
some people don't. And so like, that's a huge missed opportunity to just be like, what do I know that I could teach to somebody else for a fee? Amazing business idea.
Right. Yeah. Actually, I was gonna set up something like that. I better get my stuff together, get my LinkedIn group together, set that up. So
Yep.
my goodness, it was such a pleasure. I'm telling you, there's so many more things we can discuss, but one last question will be, what is the ultimate, what changed in your life being an entrepreneur now? What would you say is the greatest thing?
Uh, oh, there's so many. There's so many, Farah. Like it's hard to pinpoint one. I was just thinking about that this morning. I was
Okay,
driving to
three.
yeah, I was driving to Starbucks and I was like, my life is so much different. I'm a like version of my old self that I was when I left, a traditional healthcare system back in 2019. And but I think probably, oh God, I don't know.
Freedom.
Yes, it's freedom of time. It's freedom of being able to dictate how much money you want to make. It's freedom of being able to go and be present for my kids at Star Student Day. It's
Right.
freedom of not having to call the nanny, a babysitter to come and pay the babysitter overnight because my husband's traveling and I'm on call. It's the luxury of being able to make my own rules. Right, I have 60-minute visits and sometimes I make them, I need to make them 75 and it's not a problem. I do because I can set the rules. I mean, it's just freedom is at the core of it. And there's so many parts of it that I think are just so, entrepreneurship just gives you an opportunity to really do it a different way. And I think for some of us, that's like the best thing ever. Right.
Right. And I think, you're doing great things for nurses. So
Thank you.
I really celebrate what you're doing. I think it's amazing because it really takes a lot of work and consistency and commitment to really do this type of stuff. So if you guys want to definitely learn and you're a nurse practitioner, or, join any of her courses, check out her website and her podcast as well. So
Thank you.
thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was so nice to be here and to see you again.
Yes, and hopefully we'll do this again. And that's pretty much it. So, any last words for the peeps out there?
Keep going. If you got the itch, scratch it and then keep going and don't give up. I mean, there's a lot that can happen in a short amount of time, and all of that's available if you're willing to start today.
Awesome. And then for those of you, thank you, Lauren. She was a past client of mine. Thank you, for Lauren, for joining. And anybody who's listening out there, thank you again for joining. And if you're watching the replay, please let us know any comments or questions that you may have. And until next time, have a great day. All right, take care. Stay on for